Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Zeng. I'm a postdoc at Carnegie Mellon University, where I study usable security and privacy and web measurement. And so today, I will be talking about some research that I did during my PhD at the University of Washington. I guess diving into the heart of this dumpster fire, and on characterizing and measuring misleading, harmful online ads at scale. So, like it or not, online advertising is a fundamental part of the web as we know it. So many websites need the revenue from ads to make their content and services free for users. And other businesses, they depend on these online ads to promote their products and services. But when I go to a website, nothing's more off-putting to me when I see ads that are misleading, harmful, or otherwise unpleasant. So for example, in these red boxes, like these clickbait ads that look vaguely like scams, or download ads that are trying to trick me into clicking on them. And so for a lack of a better term, I'll be calling these bad ads. And so bad ads commonly use misleading techniques to trick people into clicking on them, such as clickbait headlines, shocking images, and deceptive formatting. And these ads can lead to real harms. For example, in 2021, according to the FTC, consumers reported that they lost $96 million to scams via online ads and pop-ups. And ads can also be used as a vector to spread things like ransomware, malware, and adware. However, we have very little understanding of this phenomenon of bad ads because currently there's not very much transparency from the online advertising industry, so we really just don't have a complete picture of this landscape. And additionally, what academic work has been done on online ads, like the past 10 years, mostly focuses on topics like privacy and web tracking. So to shine a light on what's going on in this ecosystem, in this talk I'll be providing a brief sample of some of the research I've been working on during my PhD to systematize our knowledge on bad ads from both a qualitative and a quantitative perspective. And so I'll be answering four questions today. So first, what makes a bad ad in the first place? How prevalent are bad ads? What enables bad ads? And what can we do about them? And so we'll start with what makes a bad ad in the first place. So, all right, definitions. How do we define this word bad I keep bandying around? Where do we draw the line between what's acceptable and what should be prohibited? And so on the left, if we have just regular products and services that we might think are okay. On the right, we're thinking about we have like two ways where we to think about what's prohibited. So for example, there's things that are illegal or violate regulations, like false advertising or ads like racially discriminatory employment ads. And so these are just not permitted by like the FTC. Another is content policy. So what the advertising companies themselves decide are not okay to put on their platforms. And so this can include things like hate speech or explicit images. But let's just assume that for the most part, regulators and content moderators are kind of doing their jobs. So we still have this gray area of stuff that just seems bad. And it doesn't technically violate any policies, but it's still appearing on the web and harming people's experience. So, so in this part of the talk, I'll kind of try to talk about, what is actually in this gray area? How do we define it? And so our approach was to look at what do people actually dislike about these ads, rather than relying on what regulators and platforms say. And so to try to investigate that, we broke this into a few research questions. So first, what are the reasons why people dislike ads? And then what is the content of those ads that people dislike? And then lastly, how does people's attitudes towards these ads affect how they use the web? And so to answer these questions, we conducted a systematic qualitative survey, actually 2 surveys. In the first, we first wanted to just ask, why do people dislike ads? And so we ran a survey with 60 people, showing them 30 ads, and just asked them to write down, why do you like this? Why do you not like this? And we used that to create a taxonomy of reasons for liking and disliking ads. And then second, we wanted to find out what kinds of ad content were associated with that taxonomy. So for example, what kind of products are common in ads that people find deceptive? And so to answer these questions, we conducted a large labeling survey where we had 1,000 participants label a set of 500 ads using that taxonomy. All right, so what did we find? Based on the qualitative part of the survey, we identified 9 distinct reasons why people dislike ads. So as you might expect, people often dislike ads that are boring, not relevant to them, or unclear. People also dislike poorly designed and ugly ads, ads that promote products that they don't like, politicized ads, and ads that are offensive, uncomfortable, or distasteful. And then lastly, people tend to dislike ads that try to mislead them. So they dislike the use of clickbait tactics, they dislike ads that appear untrustworthy, and ads that use a pushy or manipulative tone. And so let's actually dive into what kinds of ads are associated with some of these parts of the taxonomy. And I'll look at kind of like basically the 2 with the most negative reactions. So first, ads that people thought that were untrustworthy. These commonly contained ads like ads for dietary supplements that make dubious health claims, or ads for software downloads that are trying to disguise themselves as part of the page that they appear on. Or ads for things like investment advice that promise these vague, huge returns. Another category of ads that people really disliked were ads that they perceived as distasteful. And so there's a variety of stuff in here, including things like content farms. So these are like celebrity news or like listicles. And these are kind of like ads for content websites that try to maximize their page views and ad revenue with low quality but attention-grabbing headlines and articles. And then oftentimes these content farms contained various suggestive or explicit images. And then in a different category, there's these health-related and supplement ads where they tend to use gross images, again, to try to catch people's attention. However, there are types of ads that people do like seeing. So typically, these are well-designed and simple ads for things that people are genuinely interested in from familiar brands. And so these cover a range of different things like consumer products, streaming services, et cetera. Lastly, in this survey, we also investigated how people's views of ads were related to their ad blocker usage. And so this chart here shows people's overall attitude towards online ads and whether they use an ad blocker. As you can kind of see, people who generally dislike ads tend to use ad blockers more. And so it kind of suggests if we let the quality of ads go unchecked, it'll drive people to more ad-avoiding behaviors like installing ad blockers or moving to different platforms. All right, so now that we've sort of qualitatively had a look at what bad ads are, now let's think more quantitatively about how prevalent these are on the web. And so, this is kind of a big question. The web is very big. And so what we ended up doing in this study is we looked at a case study of news websites. So anecdotally, when we started this project, I had noticed there's a lot of crappy looking ads on news websites. In particular, at the time, we were looking at fake news websites. This is sort of post-2016, and this is a big deal. And we noticed there's some really egregiously bad content appearing in the ads there. And so we wanted to look at this category of sites in particular. And we came up with a few questions to try to study. So first, what kind of ads, what categories of bad ads are most common on news websites? And do they appear more on, does the quality of the website actually impact the types of ads that you see? And so we want to find out, do mainstream news websites have more bad ads than fake news websites, or vice versa? And then lastly, what ad networks were actually responsible for making these bad ads, serving these bad ads on the page? And so to answer these research questions, we conducted a measurement study where first we generated a list of mainstream and fake news websites using a combination of things like the Alexa Top 1 Million and aggregating a bunch of data from fact checkers. And then we built a web crawler that would visit all of the pages in our lists and then scrape all of the ads that it encountered. And then we ended up with a data set of 2,419 ads that we qualitatively coded, either putting it into 2 categories, benign or problematic. And then we would break down the problematic ads a little deeper. And so I'll show you that up next. Starting with what the most common categories of bad ads we saw. So in this chart, each bar represents one of the categories of problematic ads as a percentage of all of the ads we labeled in the data set. And so the top 3 that we saw were content farms, like we discussed earlier, at 11.7% of ads on all news websites. Ads for dietary supplements at 10.6% of ads, and sponsored search ads at 8.1%. And so sponsored search is sort of a form of affiliate marketing arbitrage, where they're using clickbait tactics to try to market other companies' products. So next, how prevalent were these bad ads on mainstream versus fake news websites? So in this chart, we have the percentage of ads on news websites that were labeled as problematic, with mainstream news sites on the left, fake news on the right, and then the home pages of the sites in green and the article pages in blue. And so what we found is that over half the ads on the articles of both categories of websites were in the problematic group. And so kind of the takeaway is that it's not just the low-quality fake news websites that were willing to run bad ads and harm the reputation of sites, but mainstream news sites like USA Today, Washington Post, they're engaging in some of this in running these ads as well. So another thing, next we want to look at which kinds of ad networks were responsible for serving these ads. And so on news websites in particular, we noticed that there's 2 distinct types of ads. So the standard type of ad that you'd see are called display ads. And so these are just the boxes or banners that you'd see above or within an article. Many ad networks serve these types of ads, including Google AdSense and most of the popular ones. But then particularly on news sites, there's this format of ad called native ads. And so you usually see these at the bottom or side of articles, and they're in this section labeled sponsored content or around the web. And they're specifically designed by the ad network to imitate the look and feel of news article recommendations. And so they're kind of inherent in the format, they're using this deceptive formatting. And so, and there's a few specific ad networks that engage in this, including Taboola, Outbrain, and RevContent. And what we found is that these native ads overwhelmingly contained the bad ads in our data set. So nearly 87% of the ads, of the native ads that we labeled were in one of the problematic categories, compared to only 17% of the display ads that we labeled. And so the most prevalent ad networks that serve these ads were Taboola, Outbrain, and RevContent. And so really we're seeing that these specific ad networks are responsible for a lot of the misleading and harmful content that we see on any given news website. All right, so now that we've had a taste of how prevalent these ads are across the web, now I'll dive a little deeper into what is happening in the ecosystem that's enabling this. And so the short answer is there's not really one single gatekeeper on the web when it comes to online advertising, and that causes problems. And so to explain, I need to get into this complicated distributed supply chain that underpins advertising on the web. So when you are a website and you want to run ads on your site, you'll usually work with a company called a supply-side platform. And so they will basically handle, like, you put our iframe on the page, and we will give you ads. And when you're an advertiser and you want to buy ads, you want to run them on the web, you will go through a company called a demand-side platform, where you will say, I want to buy ads, and I want to target at these people. And then to actually link these two up, whenever a user visits a web page and an ad needs to be loaded, the supply-side platform will initiate a request for an ad auction at an ad exchange. And so that'll basically link up. The ad exchange will then solicit bids from various demand-side providers and figure out who's going to bid the most, and then who's going to actually run the ad on that page. And so what this means is that there isn't just one centralized platform that is vertically integrating all these components like you might see on Facebook. And so that means it's common on the web for several different ad tech companies to be involved in serving the ads. So websites can choose from multiple different SSPs, supply-side platforms. Advertisers can run their ads through any number of demand-side providers. And importantly, each can have their own content policies and standards. And so that leads to a situation where the responsibility for content moderation in ads is distributed across a bunch of different entities. And so, and that means there's also space for bad actors to exist. So there might be some ad platforms, like the native ads networks that we talked about, who have less stringent standards for content than others. And similarly, there may be websites that are OK with running lower quality ads because maybe they pay well or they need to fill space. And so all of that just creates a space for bad ads and dishonest advertisers to run their ads. And so maybe just to bring this whole story together, basically we found there's this gray area of bad ads that people don't like to see, but they don't explicitly violate any laws or policies at the moment. And they're quite prevalent across the web, including on reputable news websites. And part of the reason why this occurs is that this distributed nature of the web advertising ecosystem and just the incentives for websites and advertisers creates a space for these bad ads to exist. And so, I think this is a problem for the web because, it's going to harm people's trust in websites, harm people's trust in online ads, and it'll drive people to do things like install ad blockers or move to other platforms like social media or on mobile, and that kind of threatens the overall health of the web platform. All right, so what can we do about all of this? I have a few maybe pipe dream academic suggestions, but from the ivory tower. But I think the incremental approach maybe is to try to build additional user trust in the web. So from the ad tech industry, there's a lot that could be done. They could adopt more user-centric content policies that hew a little more closely to what people actually find distasteful, misleading, or uncomfortable about ads on the web. There could be more coordination between the different ad platforms across the web to try to maintain higher standards for content. And as researchers, we always love if they would provide more transparency so that we can perform audits on the content of the ads, on how they're being targeted, how they're being tracked. And browsers may have a role to play in this too. So they could help in the enforcement of these ads standards for ad quality in the browser. So, for example, we already know that Chrome will block ads that use too many CPU resources and things like that. So maybe they could look into doing something like this for content and not just performance. And then lastly, regulators also have a role, mainly in just strengthening enforcement against some of the deceptive techniques that online advertisers use, such as, again, this native advertising phenomenon. And then, of course, I can't go without mentioning, we could also try to address the structural factors here, which is, and this is even more of a pipe dream, but if we were to reconsider the revenue model for the web and online advertising entirely, that could reduce the incentives for these bad ads to run and the incentives for websites to compromise on people's privacy. But of course, that is an enormous lift. And lastly, I'll just close with a few more interesting topics on the research side, because I think there's a lot more to look into bad ads than what I presented today. And so in particular, I'm interested in whether bad ads are being used in sensitive contexts and whether vulnerable populations may be targeted by bad ads. And so so previously, we did some work actually on political ads during the 2020 elections, and we found all these examples of misleading political ads from campaigns and from other organizations. And one of the things we found is that they were heavily targeted at more partisan news websites. And so we see some of these techniques seeping into the political side of things. Another interesting angle is, how are misleading ads being targeted at people who might be vulnerable to those types of deceptions? And so one thing we're looking at right now is whether health-related ads are targeted at people with health conditions. And so people who might be suffering from these health conditions might be particularly susceptible to certain deceptions relating to false health claims or cure-all supplements and things like this. And there's also the aspect where protected health information might be inferred by the advertising by the advertising ecosystem and used to target people in this way. And so basically, we're trying to find evidence that this might be happening. And with that, thank you all so much for listening to my talk. The work that I presented was a team effort from a bunch of researchers from the University of Washington, and I couldn't have done this without their help. Yeah, thank you so much, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you.